contingent of Secret Service agents on every flight, and Air Force fighters on constant alert to defend it in midair. Air Force One is the most heavily protected plane in the world. But in director Wolfgang Petersen's airborne action thriller Air Force One, the unthinkable happens.
Tell us to do this.
The president's plane is hijacked.
What better can you have than a Harrison Ford and a place like Air Force One? You know, the most secure place in the world. Secure. The flying White House, the most beautiful plane in the world. The most powerful people are on this plane. And now, what a drama. Terror kicks in.
Unfortunately, there are no defensive scenarios for a takeover of Air Force One in the air. At least that's our story's contention.
The intense physical action on board Air Force One, or AFO, is matched only by the spectrum of visual effects conceived by four-time Academy Award winner Richard Edlund and his team at Boss Film Studios in Los Angeles.
There's very many aspects of the visual effects that applied to the success of the movie, and that's what I liked about it. It was really an intelligent script and an intelligent use of visual effects.
Edlund is carrying on the exciting Hollywood tradition of creating white-knuckle, mid-air terror. The horrific bombing raids and dogfights of World War II inspired the visual effects artists of the 1940s to create a new level of realistic aerial action. Two brothers, Howard and Theodore Lydecker, led the way with their 1942 war drama, Flying Tigers. Effects teams of that era were limited to only using airplane models and mock-ups because every real aircraft was committed to the war effort.
I've lost contact with 23 Sierra. Something's wrong.
Airport 77, starring Jack Lemmon, took mid-air disaster to the bottom of the ocean.
We put people in the two most untenable positions that a human being can be in, and that's up in the air, where we are helpless. But there's another one that's just as bad, under the water, when you're helpless.
We got to drown in here.
Nobody is going to drown. The plane is pressurized.
Have you radioed for help?
Radios don't work underwater.
The filmmakers constructed a full-scale section of a 747 fuselage. Then, cast and crew on board, the plane was submerged into a huge tank of 9-foot deep water. On Air Force One, Richard Edlund's challenge is to safely create dynamic airborne action between AFO and a variety of jet fighters. To accomplish this, Edlund's team must first construct 22 realistic model aircraft over a 3-month period.
Okay, so you like the rotation?
To further convince the audience that these jets are real, robotic pilots are installed in the cockpits. Surprisingly, one of the biggest challenges for model supervisor David Jones is replicating the extreme shine of the chief executive's plane.
The real Air Force One 747 is polished to an inch of its life. It is a power symbol for the United States of America, and as such, the military keeps it very, very clean and polished.
To match the shine of the real AFO, Jones employed a high-end automobile painter who specializes in Maseratis and Ferraris. The plane requires 2 coats of paint, with an additional clear coat buffed and polished for 3 entire days. The result is a finish so lustrous that the stage must be draped in black in order to eliminate unwanted reflections. One of the most exciting and frightening scenes in Air Force One is a mid-air refueling catastrophe. The real AFO, shown here prior to being painted, is the only 747 capable of being refueled in midair. But in the movie, the fuel boom breaks. These early computer-generated test images, called animatics, show what happens. The broken boom sparks a gas fire, igniting the fuel jet in a deadly explosion directly above Air Force One. Edlund's challenge is to create the catastrophe without using the real aircraft. First, his team constructs a 1/10th scale model of the fuel jet. Once on set, it is loaded with explosives.
Roll camera! And action!
Next, a mock-up of AFO and the boom arm are filmed in front of a green screen that will later be replaced with aerial footage. A small flash explosive is rigged to spark the initial fire. The elements are digitally combined or composited at Cinesight Studios in Hollywood. The result is an awesome climax to one of Hollywood's most horrific flights. The real Air Force One has never been infiltrated by terrorists, and no chances are taken. The plane operates under an intense blanket of security. According to retired Colonel Ralph Albertazzi, seen here piloting AFO for President Richard Nixon, the plane is virtually impenetrable.
There were only a designated number of people that could get inside the fence that was always around that airplane. And even inside the hangar, the selection of the crew was very, very careful. And background checks went forever. So it was a very controlled atmosphere.
Mark it! And action!
But in the skies flown by Hollywood blockbusters, no flight is ever safe. And thanks to stunning visual effects, Air Force One is dispatched on an unforgettable mission to movie theaters around the world. Next, brace yourself for a crash, handcuffs, and shackles. Welcome aboard the real Con Air. And this is the Hollywood version of it. The action thriller Con Air stars Nicolas Cage as Cameron Poe, a paroled inmate on board a federal prison transport plane gone bad.
Well, it is an interesting concept to think what would happen if a super criminal took over the plane and had a plan.
Fire in the rear cabin! I've got a fire.
Poe's flight takes an unexpected detour when an insane killer leads a band of violent lifers on a daring hijack.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. Welcome to Con Air.
The rebel prisoners take the plane on a wild joyride that ends in a spectacular crash on the Las Vegas Strip. Piloting the aero destruction is visual effects supervisor David Goldberg of DreamQuest Images.
Well, the first thing I thought of is this is a great visual opportunity. You're going to have this plane careening down through all these lights and lights flashing and exploding left and right and people running every which way.
The harrowing descent into Las Vegas begins with one of the film's most challenging shots as Con Air clips the neon-lit Hard Rock Cafe sign. Filming the scene first requires the construction of a 5th-scale version of the plane, a C-123 military transport, and the Hard Rock Cafe sign. On location in Simi Valley, California, the plane is suspended by guide wires.
It's a big physical event. Towing the airplane on cables through 500 feet of airspace at speeds approaching 40 miles an hour.
There'll be debris. No one is to be anywhere near the set when we go. Everybody has to be back behind this truck. Once the plane is moving, we cannot stop it.
When it goes right, it's just an enormous relief. You just go, yes, it worked. This is wonderful.
The inspiration for Con Air is here in Oklahoma City. Its actual name is JPATS, the Justice, Prisoner, and Alien Transportation System, operated by the U.S. Marshal's Office. Every day it transports hundreds of prisoners.
Did the transfer in Miami go smoothly?
Thomas Little, a former JPATS pilot, is now Chief of Air Operations.
Okay.
The average flight is very boring. The inmates are usually very well mannered, very orderly. They're going across the country. They've got a view from 5 miles high. Most of them enjoy the flights.
Prior to each flight, guards scour the plane for any unusual objects that might have found their way on board.
Well, we're looking for anything that's foreign matter that would not ordinarily be on an airplane. We have maintenance functions on the airplane from time to time. There may be a lost screwdriver or a wrench. We're looking for anything that an inmate could use to maybe shim a cuff.
There has never been an escape on a JPATS flight, and the few attempts were immediately foiled. But in Con Air, the inmates attempt to beat the odds with one of the most imaginative landings ever seen. To accomplish this, Goldberg utilizes an elaborate 10th scale miniature version of the Las Vegas Strip. At 280 feet long, it contains 8 casinos and is illuminated by thousands of Christmas lights and tiny strands of neon. For Con Air's chaotic skid down the Strip, Goldberg will propel a 3rd scale model of the plane along a monorail track.
Stand by. Ready?
See the line on.
Roll cameras and action.
Piloting the real Con Air is a far more routine experience for JPATS Captain Jerry Kiley.
The majority of the job is the same as American Airlines, United Airlines, or Northwest Airlines. Our only difference is that our passengers aren't allowed to enplane or deplane at their option. The way our people put it is, if you're indicted, you're invited.
While the indicted invitees are shackled at the wrists, around the stomach, and at the ankles, they are not as locked down as portrayed in the movie.
What you looking at, punk?
Nothing, I was just my on your cage.
We do restrain their movement, but we don't put them in cages.
While JPATS makes the transporting of inmates seem routine, it is also the inspiration for some of the wildest action ever created by the visual effects artists who navigate Hollywood's brightly lit skies of aeronautical mayhem. Next, President Harrison Ford. There has never been a movie portrayal of the president that has required as much harrowing action as Harrison Ford's in Air Force One.
The character, as he was conceived in the screenplay, had a history of military involvement.
What is your feeling about, did you understand?
It's been a long time since this president has been involved in physical action, but it is part of his history. We wanted a character that had the capacity, believable capacity, to take physical charge of the situation.
The film's incredible mid-air excitement includes a scene where the president is nearly blown off the jet. He hangs on for dear life as he is pulled back on.
Roll cameras!
Ford is harnessed to an overhead rig and blown away by fans and wind machines as he acts out the scene.
I have a lot of fun doing physical stuff. I like physical storytelling. And it's fun to, to break up the day by running, jumping, and falling down and rolling around the ground.
Got up that high.
It looked like you did.
Yeah,
There's a lot of space underneath it.
Look good. Stats, acting.
That's right.
But the question is, are there such escape methods in place should the real president ever have to evacuate Air Force One?
There is no way that the president can escape the airplane without being on the ground. He can jump out on the slide like everybody else.
Real-life presidential air travel has never been this hazardous. It was also not always this luxurious. In 1943, Franklin Delano Roosevelt became the first president to ever make an official trip in an airplane.
At this West African port fronting the Atlantic Ocean arrives President Roosevelt.
He flew to Casablanca for a secret wartime conference with Winston Churchill. His initial flight to Africa was on board a Pan Am waterplane called the Dixie Clipper. FDR would also become the first president to have an Air Force plane designated specifically for his use. But rather than Air Force One, his plane had a much less noble title, the Sacred Cow. During Harry Truman's administration, the Air Force provided him a regal-looking DC-5, dubbed Independence, and painted to look like a bald eagle. It was during Dwight Eisenhower's administration that the term Air Force One was first used.
There's a common misconception about what Air Force One is. Air Force One is nothing but a call sign and is only applicable to the airplane when the president is on it.
Recreating Air Force One for the movie is a daunting challenge for production designer William Sandell. For security reasons, access and information about the jet is extremely limited. But the filmmakers were granted a tour by permission of President Bill Clinton.
They took all my cameras away. I had little ones, big ones, video cameras. They got them all, the Secret Service. And we got a great royal tour through the whole plane. So all we could do was take notes.
Sandell and the construction team do their best to replicate AFO on 150-foot-long sets in as much detail as possible.
They don't allow you to duplicate it exactly, so we modified it to their satisfaction. Basically, the president sleeps in the front of the plane, and has a lovely bedroom. There's a big conference room where the president and his staff hold meetings. Then all the press sits in the back.
Keep moving.
And then, of course, we have this sort of spooky basement in the airplane where, which really does exist on Air Force One, where our president sort of fights the good fight.
While Con Air and Air Force One take dramatic license with the real-life aircraft they portray, both films bring these truly unique air services to moviegoers all over the world. The two planes have drastically different missions, but they both fly in service to their country. And for Hollywood's practitioners of movie magic, they serve as dramatic vehicles for creating terror at 35,000 feet.
All those galaxies blasting by you. Each galaxy could have life in it.
And is it possible that on at least one of those billions of planets, a deep space encounter awaits us? The movies have always believed so, and the worlds depicted in Contact and Starship Troopers symbolize the full range of possibilities that may someday greet us. Which scenario will most closely resemble the truth may not be known for eons. Or perhaps the answer will arrive before dawn. For now, we can only ponder. But thanks to the extraordinary talents of Hollywood's visual effects artists, our extraterrestrial visions will be forever colored by their amazing use of movie magic.
Édes anyanyelv.